Kong Skull Island is one of the most tonally awkward and kind of strangely made movies I've seen in quite some time. And I know I'm saying this in the heels of Logan being out, but seriously, this movie was really weird. I didn't think it was a bad movie. A lot of people seem to think I hate every movie I see. In general, I like about a third of the movies I see. I hate about a third, and I kind of have mixed feelings about a third. And this is definitely in the mixed feelings category. There's good aspects in this movie. There's a lot of bad aspects in this movie. It's kind of a real mixed bag, and that can be good. That can be bad. I mean, sometimes it's like a bad movie that's brought up by good elements, and sometimes it's a good movie brought down by bad elements. And Kong is kind of, I guess, somewhere in between. It's, I don't know. I guess I'll just start talking about the movie because it's hard to really explain. So, Kong Skull Island purports to be a Vietnam War film. And you may be going, Argent, what the hell are you talking about? What does King Kong have to do with the Vietnam War? Well, apparently, like, Kong is a Vietnam War film for some reason now. God, what was the logic? So there's, like, this huge montage at the beginning of the movie showing, like, the history of military development. Or I should say the movie starts with a Japanese and a American pilot crash landing on Skull Island and seeing Kong. And then we get like this montage like the beginning of Watchmen or Dark of the Moon that has no context and really doesn't contribute anything to the movie, that just goes on, and apparently like military technology is being developed, all this stuff is going on, etc. So then we come to the present day, which is the end of Vietnam, where everyone's finally starting to pull out. And we get John Goodman, I think his name. Is that his name, John Goodman? Let me just see. Yes, John Goodman. John Goodman is the head of an organization called Monarch, which tracks down like supernatural monsters. Because apparently when he was a kid, some unspecified monster destroyed the ship he was on, and he was the only survivor. Okay? And he's devoted his life to chasing down monsters. So he gets a senator to fund an expedition to go to Skull Island because Landsat is going to go there to map it. So he needs a military escort, though. So they get Samuel L. Jackson, who's a colonel. He's like a really patriotic war hero colonel who doesn't want to leave Vietnam and wants to continue the war. And they get him, and he volunteers to go to Skull Island and be the military escort for Monarch and for John Goodman. They also recruit a photojournalist who's like up for a Pulitzer Prize, or who's going to be on the cover of Time for taking anti-war photos, and an ex-member of the SAS. So with this crack team assembled, they go to Skull Island, and like any Lost World movie, there's like a storm that's surrounding the island, and they have to go through the storm to get to the island. Now this is exciting because it means they're cut off from the outside world. I mean, this is Lost World, like H. Rider Haggard, like Atlantis the Lost Empire, classic. So they fly in on the helicopters and they get to the island, and they decide that they're going to map the island by dropping sonic charges, or I guess I think they're sonic charges. I forget what they're called. But apparently, if you blow stuff up, then that sends tremors to the earth, and you can use a mapping device to seismic charges. That was it. And you can determine what the composition is. So they do that, and they find out that Skull Island is hollow. They're flying around in helicopters dropping bombs. So then all of a sudden, Kong shows up, and he starts destroying the helicopters. And when he's destroying the helicopters, the Colonel Samuel L. Jackson's like, "We gotta go. We gotta kill this big monkey." And then so all the helicopters go over and start shooting at Kong, and their bullets don't do anything. And this is kind of an issue I have in a lot of these movies, is how bullets don't do anything. And I mean, I guess to a certain point in, like, I can kind of understand why, let's see here. I can understand why, like, small arms wouldn't hurt them, but really, um, modern machine guns, like, they have 50 cals. The 50 cals don't hurt it. The chain guns on the side of helicopters don't hurt it. None of these things do any damage. I mean, these things can literally. I'm pretty sure a 50 cal can destroy light tanks. 50 cals are actually very good in anti-vehicle work, but for some reason the 50 caliber machine guns can't penetrate Kong. Although like a couple do, but they decide, despite having like long range guns, they go in like at point blank range and try to shoot Kong. And when that happens, Kong obviously downs all the helicopters and starts killing the soldiers on the ground. So the people who survive are like, we gotta get off this island. They're gonna come in for a refueling run in 4 days, and if we're not on the north side of the island, they won't send anyone back, and then we're screwed. We're stuck here forever. And so they're like, okay, we gotta get to the northern side of the island. But Samuel L. Jackson doesn't want to. He wants to get to the larger down helicopter and get munitions there and use them to kill Kong. So the civilians, including the like photojournalist, the SAS guy, and John Goodman, they go on like wandering around and they see all these like kind of cool big monster type things. Like there's this giant, I don't know, is it a buffalo, an elk, some kind of giant cow-like thing in the water. We get to see Kong fighting a kraken. And I mean, like, this movie has good special effects. There's some cool animals. Skull Island itself looks pretty good. But yeah, so they're wandering around and they find this village of people. They're like, I don't know, Southeast Asians. And they come across John C. Reilly, who's in this movie for some reason. And he was the pilot who was down like 30 years ago. So, like, he's a comedic actor, but he's in what's ostensibly a somewhat serious movie. So it's extremely, extremely tonally awkward. Because you have, like, all these people getting fucking eaten and wiped out. Kong's killing people. You got other monsters. You have this giant spider that's impaling people. And then you have John C. Reilly, who's just being John C. Reilly. Who's just doing, like, shake and bake from Talladega Nights. And that's just, it's jarring. And that's, I think, the single biggest problem with this movie is you have this whole thing where Kong is the god of the island. He's protecting the humans. They're these monsters that he's keeping sealed within the earth, that if they get out, they're going to destroy the world. So you got that. Then you got Samuel L. Jackson, who's like this war hero who wants redemption, who doesn't want to cut and run from here like Vietnam. Then we got this photographer who's an anti-war photographer. And then we have fucking John C. Reilly, who's just giving a performance like that. And John Goodman, who's also giving a John Goodman performance. And it's really weird. And there's like an ambiguous romantic subplot going on between the SAS guy and the photojournalist. I mean, honestly, if they had just kissed at the end, that would have been a lot better. But because of feminism, we can't have tacked on romantic subplots anymore. We have to go one step worse and have non-tacked on romantic subplots, which don't even happen. So John C. Reilly's like, I used our planes. The Japanese guy's dead, by the way. And I built this ship, and we can sail up the river, and we can go and get off of Skull Island. So they try to do that, but Samuel L. Jackson wants to go and save one of his men and get those missiles and those weapons. And they're like, okay, we'll go with the guy who's obviously crazy. So they go through this skull graveyard, and it turns out that there's these things called skull crawlers, which are giant lizards with skulls. And it turns out that they wiped out Kong's family, and he's the last of them. And the people of the island worship him because he kills the skull crawlers, who pretty much have brought their society to the brink of extinction. So they go to the field where the skull crawlers live, and basically they just start getting eaten alive by them, and they get their asses kicked. and then Kong comes in and saves them. But and they find out that the soldier they were going for is actually dead. Um, but Samuel L. Jackson doesn't care. He's like, I don't want to cut and run. He's like the Viet Cong. I got the jungle fever in me, or whatever. So he leaves and he goes with his men to set up a trap for Kong. And then they're gonna go back to the ship. They're like, we gotta save Kong. He's gonna kill Kong. If Kong dies, these fucking monsters are gonna come out and destroy the world. So Samuel Jackson has like this big trap set up where he basically starts setting off bombs. It turns out the reason why Kong tried to kill them is because the seismic charges blew holes in the ground that the skull crawlers came out of. Because Kong had sealed up most of the holes, and whenever they'd open a hole, he'd be able to kill them as they'd come out. So they were coming out from all over the place. So Samuel Jackson has like this trap set up, so he starts blowing stuff up. He has napalm on the water, so he lights Kong on fire. And then Kong falls over. And after Kong falls over, they put a whole bunch of C4 around him. And then the photojournalist and the SAS guy show up. And they're able to basically convince all the soldiers to leave Samuel Jackson. And he's about to press the button and blow it up when Kong just squishes him. In a strangely comedic scene. So they start running away and they get back to the boat and they're going on. And then the matriarch of the skull crawlers comes out, and it's the one that ate Kong's family. So we're treated to like a lengthy battle scene where Kong is fighting the skull crawler. We also have a scene where a guy pulls the pin on 2 grenades and tries to basically blow himself up to kill the skull crawler. The idea being that it's going to eat him and he's going to blow it up from the inside, but it just smacks him with his tail and he flies into a building and explodes. And that was really just kind of it was just kind of like weird. It's really dark. And John C. Reilly is using a katana, which is campy as fuck. And there's like a scene where they give the katana to the SAS guy and he has like a slow motion montage where he's cutting these things in half. This movie's really tonally weird. But yeah, so Kong has a big fight with the giant skull crawler and he winds up killing it. This is probably the high point of the movie. The special effects are awesome. Kong kind of uses like wrestler-esque moves. And it's just a really brutal beatdown fight. So Kong succeeds in winning. They get off of the island. And then there's like this post-credit scene where John C. Reilly goes back to see his family that he left behind 30 years ago. And they agree not to tell anybody what happened on the island. And that's the end. I mean, there's no really end. It just kind of stops. So, like, what can you say about Kong Skull Island? There's this running joke I try to have called "You Demanded It," and that is a reference to, for Paranormal Activity, people were like, "I want to see this movie. This is the scariest movie of all time. It's got great reviews, but it doesn't have money behind it, so it's not going to come to our theater." And the makers of Paranormal Activity is like, well, it's going to come if you demand it. Tell the theater people you're going to see it. Tell them that you want this to get done. And I think it was the same thing with Paranormal Activity 2. They're like, demand that we make this movie. You guys want to see more Paranormal Activity. Demand that we make it. And we'll make it. And it's a running joke I use for any unnecessary sequel, any unnecessary reboot. Just films that are made because they're like, oh, we're fulfilling this demand that no one wanted. And like the Pirates sequels are like that. Like At World's End is an example of that. On Stranger Tides is probably the biggest example because no one wanted a 4th Pirates movie. No one wanted it to be shitty like that. No one wanted Dead Man Tell No Tales, but they're making it anyways. The Zorro sequel's another you demanded it type movie. Jupiter Ascending. I'm trying to think of some more. Any of the presented in 2 parts for your viewing displeasure. That's an example of demand. Just it's hard to think off the top of my head, but just think of any like bad remake, bad reboot, unnecessary sequel. Oh, like Independence Day 2. It just and the joke is you demanded it. You really, really wanted this, and it's just shit. And this is a You Demanded It movie where people saying we need a new King Kong movie. We need this. We need to do more King Kong. I guess some people did, but did they want like this tonally awkward, weird movie that doesn't feel finished that has Samuel L. Jackson in it? Like, why is it a Vietnam War film? Were people saying we need to make a Vietnam War film about the trauma of withdrawing from Vietnam, but have King Kong in it? Like, how do those two things fit together? Like, were they just like, we want to make this Vietnam War film with Samuel L. Jackson, but we also want to make King Kong, so let's put them together because that's what people want. They want King Kong in the Vietnam War, and it'll do really well. And I mean, you're just scratching your head. Like, why did they do that? Why is John C. Reilly in this? Why is Samuel L. Jackson in this? Like, people give Peter Jackson's King Kong shit, and admittedly, it is really long, but it's tonally consistent. It's intense the whole way through. It has a lot more kind of themes and meaning to it than this film. This film is kind of like a popcorn action film that's too serious to be kind of a turn your mind off action movie. Like, it's really gory. Like, people get killed, people blow themselves up, people get eaten, but it's kind of played for laughs, but not really. It doesn't go far enough to be like cartoony violence, like something like John Wick. Like in John Wick, it's just funny. Like it's obviously they're not taking it seriously, the number of people he kills. But in this movie, like they kind of take it seriously and kind of don't. And you just have John C. Reilly, and I keep saying his name, but you just have his like Will Ferrell-esque acting in a King Kong movie that's not a comedy. And it's this film was just weird. I mean, it's not bad. I kind of enjoyed it, but it's not good. I'd give this movie probably a 6 out of 10. I wouldn't recommend watching it. It's like okay. If you really want like a dumb fun action movie, I wouldn't even recommend this. I'd recommend wait for Fate of the Furious to come out. That'll be awesome. But no, I can't recommend King Kong. It's just not good. It's not really disappointing. I didn't have any expectations for it. But it's just not a good movie. That's all I have to say. I'll talk to you later.